Hello and welcome to Inspirational Eby. My name is Ebuka again. You see, a number of people want to do all they do on other keys. The chords they play, the licks, the scales, the riffs, the runs and all that. They want to be able to do all that on other keys. And in order to play in a key, you got to know the notes that belong to the key. And to know the notes that belong to the key, you got to learn about the major scale. Now, many lessons out there show you the major scales, show you the notes of the major scales. And so you end up trying to put the scales to memory. But it's gonna be difficult, right? So here, I'm not just gonna show you the notes. I'm gonna show you how the notes come about. We're going to be learning how to build the major scale. So you don't just cram the notes or force the notes to memory. You understand how to build the major scale. So we'll be looking at building major scales. Now, there are two rules that guide one in building major scales. Two rules. What are they? The first is the major scale intervals. And second is the music alphabet. Major scale intervals, music alphabet. These are the two rules. Now let's see these two rules in details. Number one, the major scale intervals. So this rule states that all 7 major scale intervals must be present. And what are these intervals? Whole step, half step. Whole step, half step. Right? So these are the major scale intervals. Whole step, half step. Whole step, half step. Okay, let's understand this rule. Now, what's an interval in the first place? An interval is simply the distance between any two notes. Right? The distance between any two notes. So for example, I pick this and I pick this. There is a distance between these two notes. In music, we call it interval. This, any two notes, right? There's a distance between any two notes. That distance, we refer to it as what? Interval. Now, there are a number of intervals in music, but there are two intervals that will help us build the major scale. Two intervals. The first interval is the interval of the very next note. That is, two notes next to each other. So, if I pick this, what's the very next note going forward? Right? So you can see. This interval, in music we call it what? Half step. So that's the first interval we're looking at. The interval of half step. Right? You can see. The very next. The interval between these two notes is called what? Half step. The very next note. Sing it? Either forward or backward. Sing it? The very next. That's the interval of what? Half step. The second interval that will help us to build the major scale is the interval of 2 half steps, which is called whole step. So when I go 2 half steps, 1, 2. This is the interval of what? Whole step. Now, I want to go 2 half steps backward. 1. This is the interval of what? Whole step, right? Whether forward or backward. So 2 half steps give you a whole step, right? So these are the 2 intervals that we need to build major scales. So back to that major scale intervals. Whole step, half step. Whole step, half step. Now you understand the major scale intervals, right? So to build a major scale, we'll go a whole step, a half step, a whole step, a whole step, and then a half step. And then we build the major scale, right? So we go to the second rule, which is the musical alphabet. So the rule states that all 7 music alphabets must be present. All 7. And what are the music alphabets? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? And then we go back to A, B, C, D. So there is no H or I or J and so on, right? So all 7 musical alphabets must be present. So if you spell out any major scale and any alphabet gets missing, then you are wrong. Your major scale must have all 7 letters, right? Now, there are 3 musical concepts that use the musical alphabets in naming notes appropriately. So in order to name the notes appropriately using this musical alphabet, there are 3 musical concepts that will help you in doing that. The first is called natural. Second, sharp. Third, flat. So we have natural, sharp, and flat, right? So let's see these 3 concepts briefly. So when we say natural, we are talking about the musical alphabets without any other attachment, just the musical alphabets, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, without any sharp, without any flat, right? So just like C, D, E, F, G, A, B, you can see just the natural names, without any sharp, without any flat. And that is why sometimes the white keys are referred to as natural keys, right? Because we name the white keys using naturals. So naturals are used on only the white keys. You can't use natural on black keys, right? Because they will come with some attachment, whether it's a sharp or a flat. But we use the naturals only on what? The white keys, right? So you understand natural. Then we go to sharp, right? Sharp, which is the second musical concept that uses the musical alphabet. So to sharpen a note is simply to raise the note by a half step, right? Raise the note by a half step. You already know what a half step is, right? The very next note. So when we raise the note by a half step, we only move to the very next note forward. So for instance, let's go to the let's name the black keys using sharp. So let's say C. When I raise C by a half step, so I'm going to the very next note. This note now becomes what? C sharp, right? Sharp, C sharp. Why? I moved from C a half step forward. C sharp. So this note here is called C sharp. What of this? So let's move from D, D sharp, right? This is D, D sharp. What of this? F sharp, right? What of this? G sharp, right? And what of this? A sharp, right? So the black notes are what? C sharp, D sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp. Now, sharps are also used in naming white keys, not only black keys, right? So let's use the sharps in naming some white keys. How about this? Right? So we know this as F, but we can use a sharp in naming it. So this is E. What if we go from E a half step, we raise it by a half step? This becomes what? E sharp, right? So F can also be called what? E sharp. What about this one here, which we know as C, right? So let's move from B a half step, we get what? B sharp, right? So we've named 2 white keys using sharps. E sharp, B sharp, right? So sharps are used on both black and white keys. So we have named 7 sharps now. What are the 7 sharps? C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and B sharp, right? So that's the sharp. Let's go to the flat, right? So the flat is just like the opposite of the sharp. So for the flat, we lower the note by a half step, right? We lower the note by a half step. Just the opposite. Lower the note by a half step. So let's go back to the black keys, right? So we had called this one what? C sharp, right? But now we want to name it using a flat. So we're lowering. So we're coming from D backwards, right? So this is D. This becomes what? D flat. D flat. Then this becomes what? E flat. E flat. Are you seeing it? Why this one is what? From G down. So we have G flat. This one is what? From A down, A flat. This one is what? From B down, B flat, right? So the black keys using flat, D flat, E flat, G flat, A flat, B flat. Now, just like the sharps, we can also name some white keys using flats. So how about this one? Right? we know it as E, but we can name it using flat. So we just go from F, we lower the note F by a half step, we get what? F flat. Are you seeing it? F flat. F flat, right? What about this one? Right? We know it as B, but we can name it using flat. We just move from C, lowered by a half step, we get what? C flat, right? C flat. So we've named two white keys using flat. F flat, C flat. So just like sharps, flat can be used on both black keys and white keys. And so we have named 7 flats. So what are the 7 flats, right? We have C flat, D flat, E flat, F flat, G flat, A flat, B flat. Are you seeing it? 7 flats. So notice that the use of sharps and flats has made some keys to have more than one name, right? Some keys are having more than one name. The 5 black keys and some white keys having more than one name. So you can see this is called C sharp or D flat, D sharp or E flat, F sharp or G flat, G sharp or A flat, A sharp or B flat, right? Let's see also some white keys there. This one is E or what? F flat. This one is F or what? E sharp. This one is what? B or C flat. C or B sharp. So one particular tone having 2 names. What do we call that? We call it enharmonic equivalent. Enharmonic equivalent, meaning C sharp is the enharmonic equivalent of D flat. 2 notes producing the same sound. So 2 notes, C sharp and D flat, 2 notes producing the same sound. Are you seeing it? The same sound. D sharp and E flat, 2 notes producing the same sound. What do we call it? Enharmonic equivalent. So these are enharmonic notes, right? Now, these are the 2 rules. So we're going to apply these 2 rules in building scales. So for a recap, the first rule, all the major scale intervals must be present. Second rule, all the 7 musical alphabets must be present. So let's apply this rule in building some major scales. Let's start with the very major scale that everyone knows, right? So let's confirm that is the C major scale. Let's apply these 2 rules and know if we will get the C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, which we know. So we want to confirm it using the 2 rules that we have learned. Now let's start. C. So the major scale interval, the first interval demands what? A whole step. The first interval is a whole step. So we move a whole step. And after C, the next alphabet is what? D. You seen it? The next interval, a whole step. The next letter after D is E. The next interval, a half step. The very next note. The next letter after E is F. The next interval, a whole step. The next letter after F is G. The next interval, a whole step. The next letter after G is A. The next interval, a whole step. The next letter after A is B. And the last interval, a half step. And the next letter after B is C. Right? C. So you can see that the C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, it confirms that the 2 rules are correct. And the major scale, the C major scale, is also correct. Right? Now let's build another scale, the F major scale. The F major scale. So let's apply the rules again. So we start from F. The first interval, a whole step. So we move a whole step. And after F, we have G. The next interval, a whole step. And after G is A. The next interval is a half step. And after A is what? B. B. So remember that this can be called B flat or A sharp, right? We can call it A sharp or B flat. It has 2 names. But which name are we going to pick? We're going to pick B flat because of the B there. The music alphabet demands a B after A. So we can't use A sharp here because this is already called A. A has been used. So we're going to use the name that has B, which is what? B flat. Do you now understand why this is called B flat? Right? So this is B flat. We move on. The next interval is a whole step, and after B is C. I C. The next interval, a whole step, and after C is D. The next interval, a whole step, and after D is E. The next interval, a half step, and after E is F. So the F major scale, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. You now know why this is called B flat, right? That's correct. Let's see another major scale, the G major scale, right? So we have G, first interval, a whole step. After G, we have A. Next interval, a whole step. After A, we have B. Next interval is a half step. The very next, and after B is C. The next interval, a whole step. After C is D. Next interval, a whole step. After D is E. Next interval is a whole step, right? And after E, so this is a whole step. After E is F. So this should be called F, right? It should be called a name that has F. So what are the two names of this particular sound here? It can either be called F sharp or G flat. F sharp or G flat, right? Remember? F sharp or G flat. So but which one are we going to pick? We're going to pick F sharp because after E, we need an F. That's why we're calling this one what? F sharp. Do you understand? So we can't call this G flat because if we call it G flat, there'll be no F. This is E, so there's no F. But remember the rule, there must be all 7 musical alphabets. So we use F sharp, right? And the last interval is a half step, and after F is what? G. So the G major scale, we have G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. So you now understand why this is called F sharp, right? So you can see how the two rules have been applied in building scales. Now let's consider a very popular key, especially here in Nigeria. This particular key, very commonly used here, but there is usually a kind of a problem with naming the notes in the key. So let's start with F sharp, right? So let's call this F sharp. Let's get this the F sharp major scale. The F sharp major scale. So we have, we start with F sharp. So the first interval is what? Whole step. After F we have G. So this is what? G sharp, right? G sharp. We're going to use the sharp because this is also called G sharp or A flat. But we are using G sharp because of the G. Because we have used F here, so we're going to use the G sharp, right? The next interval is a whole step, and after G is A. So we call this what? A sharp, right? A sharp. The next interval is a half step. A half step. And after A is what? B. So this is called B, right? No sharp, no flat, because it's B. Right? Natural there. B. The next interval is a whole step. And after B is C. So we call this what? C sharp. Right? C sharp. And not D flat. Even though it's also called D flat. But we're using C sharp because of the C there. We need a C after B. C. So C sharp. The next interval, a whole step. After C is D. So we call this what? D sharp. D sharp. The next interval is a whole step. And after D is E. So what do we call this? E sharp. Remember, this is E. E sharp. E sharp. And not F. Right? And not F. Not F. So there is no F in the key of F sharp. There is no F. What we have there is what? E sharp. Right? And so the last interval is a half step. After E is F. So we call this F sharp. Right? F sharp. So this is actually where most people get it wrong. In the key of F sharp, there is no F. So if you're spelling out, you're in the key of F sharp and you're spelling out the notes and you call an F, you're wrong. What we have here is what? E sharp. Right? So F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp. Right? So let's go back to that same, this same sound here, and then we use what? G flat. Let's get the G flat major scale, right? G flat major scale. So we start G flat. So the first interval is whole step. After G is A. So we call this A flat. A flat, right? Right? A flat. After, the next interval is a whole step. After A is B. That's B flat. The next interval is a half step. After B is C. So this is called what? C flat. C flat. Remember the two names of this note of this sound here. The two names, it's either called B or C flat. Now we're using C flat because after B we require what? A C. So in the key of G flat, this is called what? C flat. But if you call it F sharp, the key of F sharp, this is what? B. Are you seeing the difference now? Based on the rules. So if you're going to be calling it the key of F sharp, you're going to be using B here. But if you're going to be calling it the key of G flat, you're going to be using C flat here. Do you understand? So we move on. The next interval is a whole step. So we have used C. After C is D. So what do we call this? D flat. The next interval is a whole step. After D is E. So E flat. The next interval is a whole step. After E is F. F. So we're already on F. There's no need for any other attachment, right? F. F. So this is named using the natural F. And the last interval is a half step. After F is G. So we call this G flat, right? G flat. So in the key of G flat, right, this is called F, while this is C flat. But in the key of F sharp, this is B and this is E sharp, right? So whatever key you want to call it, you got to use the notes that belong to the key. So you can't call this F sharp and you're telling me that this is F. That would be wrong. So based on the two rules, depending on the key which you are in, you got to use the appropriate notes, right? So what do you notice there? You notice that we have two different scales producing the same sound. So the F sharp major scale, the G flat major scale. Same scale, same sounds produced, but different scales, right? Having different set of notes. What do we call that in music? Enharmonic scales. So we've mentioned enharmonic before, right? Enharmonic scales. Two scales, same sounds produced, but different notes, right? Different notes, enharmonic scales. So let's see another set of, controversial, in quote, enharmonic scales, right? The C sharp and the D flat major scales, right? C sharp and the D flat major scales. So let's build the C sharp major scale. So C sharp, we start. The first interval, a whole step, and after C we have what? D. So this is D sharp. The next interval, a whole step, and after D is E. So this is called what? E sharp. E sharp, right? The next interval is half step, and after E is F. So this is what? F sharp. F sharp, right? The next interval is a whole step, and after F is G. So this is G sharp. The next interval, a whole step, after G is A. So this is A sharp. The next interval is a whole step, and after A is B. So this is called what? Whole step after A is B. So this is called B sharp, right? B sharp. Even though we know this as C, the natural name, but it can also be called B sharp. And we're using B sharp because the next letter after A is B. B sharp. And the last interval is a half step, and after B is C. So this is called C sharp. So in the C sharp major scale, we have C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, C sharp, right? So in the key of C sharp, there is no F, there is no C. But most times people tend to be in the key of C sharp. They say I'm in the key of C sharp, and then they get to this particular one, they're calling it F. Can you see now that it's wrong? Also this one, C, it's wrong. So it's called what? E sharp and what? B sharp. Now let's see the D flat major scale. Back to that same pitch there, the D flat major scale. So we have D flat. First interval, whole step. After D, we have E. So this is E flat. Next interval, whole step. And after E is F. So we are already on F. F, right? Are you seeing it? F. So in the key of D flat, we have an F. But in the key of C sharp, we don't have an F. So this is F. The next interval, half step, we move half step there. And after F, we have G. So this is G flat. G flat. The next interval, whole step. After G is A flat. The next interval, whole step. After A is B flat. The next interval is a whole step. And after B is C. So you can see we have a natural C there. C. And the last interval is a half step. After C is D. So we have a D flat. So the D flat major scale, D flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, C, D flat. You seen it? So in the key of D flat, we have F and we have C. So if you want to call these two notes F and C by their natural names, you got to be in the key of D flat. But if you call it the key of C sharp, then you're going to be calling this one what? E sharp, and calling this one what? B sharp. Do you now understand how the use of the two rules, right, the musical alphabet and the major scale intervals, have enabled us to build the major scales correctly? So you can use these information in building other major scales, right? Anyway, I'm going to give you a list of the major scales and their notes, but you don't have to cram them or try to force them to memory. Just apply this information in building all other major scales so that you can be actually certain that you got the names correctly. You're using the appropriate names, appropriate note names, right? Using the appropriate notes for the different major scales. Do you understand, right? Now you know how to name notes correctly, and I'm happy about that. So thank you for watching. Till I come your way next time, this is Inspirational Eby, edifying the soul.